Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be having a look at a disease called arthritis, and what you can apply, or the symptoms you can apply and the treatments you can apply for arthritis. You can also apply to gout. My mother had rheumatoid arthritis, and she developed rheumatoid arthritis, I think she was in her early 40s, so I was only probably about 19 or 20 at the time. And when you're young, you never think you'll get sick. You don't think of sickness, but it wasn't long before my mother was wheelchair bound. And I was working at North Ryde Psychiatric Hospital at the time, and I was working in the surgical wing. And I saw some of the surgeries that they did to straighten out hands, because my mother's hands were all deformed like that. And so I told Mum and Dad, I said, if Mum went to this doctor, he could straighten her hands out. And she had the operation. It was very painful, but the hands weren't very much better. That's all I knew. Now, Mum and Dad continued on. My father's an inventor. He even invented a little fold-up wheelchair so he could take Mum around. For 6 years, Mum was a cripple in a wheelchair with rheumatoid arthritis. And at about this time, I had moved north, and I moved to an area where Seventh-day Adventists live. I'd never heard of Seventh-day Adventists. And one of the girls that I got to know, she had a visitor, and this lady was in her 80s, and her name was Daisy. And she said, "You will love Daisy. You see, I'd just become interested in natural remedies." She said, "Daisy knows lots of natural remedies." And Daisy was the sweetest lady. And I told Daisy about my mum, and she said, "I think I can help your mum." So I rang my dad and I said, "Dad, I've just found a lady who thinks she can help Mum," because Mum had gone through all the drugs. She'd had gold injections. She'd been on so many drugs. Then she had to come off the drugs, and then she had the withdrawals of coming off the drugs. It wasn't a very nice journey. And here I met this lady who said that she believed she could help Mum. So I rang up my dad. Now, I'm about 2 hours north of Sydney at this time, and Dad's in Sydney. So he flew up to, I don't know if you know Brisbane, that's up in Queensland. So he flew up, he met Daisy and also the man that she worked with, and he was convinced, and my dad's not a Christian at all, but that Daisy was a Christian. And he was so impressed with this couple, he said, "I think they can help Mum." So we took Mum up there. Remember, Mum's a cripple in a wheelchair. She'd lost a lot of weight, but her knees were swollen, her feet were swollen. And little by little, Daisy helped her. Daisy put her on juices. Daisy massaged her every day. Daisy put her in the sun. In fact, everything Daisy did is what we do at our health retreat now, but we'd never heard of such things. Mum had been there a few weeks, and then I went up there. I had my little baby James and my little toddler Emma, so I was about 25 at the time. And I saw what Daisy was doing, and it was just thrilling for me to see. Daisy got my mum off all her medication. She got my mum pain-free. That was just incredible. But it was very difficult for my mum. She was so used to living like this. Daisy said to me, "I don't know what to do now, because I want your mum to start exercising," and she just sits and looks out the window. So Daisy said to my dad, I have done all I can for your mum. It's now her part to start doing some things to build up her body." And so Dad took Mum back home. And I think Mum knew that what else was there for her. And she started to deteriorate, and Dad didn't know what to do, so he put her into hospital. She was in the hospital 2 nights, and we got the word that she had died in the night. She was only 51 when she died. I was only 25. But we were puzzled, and we almost think maybe Mum gave up the will to live. But I'm one of 5 children, and we all have inherited genes towards arthritis. So now I am way past the age that my mum died. I am now very much into everything that Daisy was into. Daisy has passed now. If Daisy was alive now, Daisy'd probably be about 120. But the whole family, my brothers and sisters, we were very challenged by this situation. My dad came back home and he changed his whole life. He became a vegetarian overnight. He went to a health retreat. He stopped coffee. He didn't ever drink and he didn't ever smoke, but he was quite a big meat eater. And then time went on and I got more and more into natural remedies. And that's how I got into natural remedies, is the influence of that experience with Daisy and my mum. And then also not wanting to give my children drugs. So I learnt more and more, and some of the things I use today are still things that I learnt from Daisy. And so as I'm moving on through my life, gaining more and more experience on the natural remedies, I was a single mum for 4 years. My first husband was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and it got very difficult. So the children and I were single for 4 years. And some say that must have been hard. I'll tell you, it was a lot easier than what we'd been living under. Anyway, my eldest daughter went to work in a health retreat in Queensland. And so after a year, the children and I went and moved up that area, and I started to work part-time in the health centre. And after a year, the business manager asked me to marry him. And I said yes. And then a year later, Michael said he wanted to start his own health retreat. So we've been married almost 25 years. In fact, 25 years in about another 2 weeks. And as I have been teaching and helping people, that is my best learning curve. And so I begin with this story to show you that the subject of arthritis is very close to home to me. And I'm always intrigued as to the why. I now know why my mum got rheumatoid arthritis. Because as the proverb said, it's Proverbs 26 verse 2, it says, "The curse causeless shall not come." In other words, no curse, no problem ever comes without a cause. There is always a reason. You see, that's Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion. To every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. And we must always be scientific, because science basically is the way that the body runs. And so I'd like to take you through why my mum got arthritis and why I'm not a cripple in a wheelchair with rheumatoid arthritis, considering I got similar genes to mum. And every now and then I get a little knock, just a little knock like that, and I say to my body, "I'm hearing you." And I know exactly what to do if I get that sore joint. Now, I touch there because that sometimes gets sore. And what you'll often find is a past injury. It can heal, but maybe 20 years later, that might be where arthritis might manifest itself. So arthritis is an inflammatory condition. So the next question is, what causes the inflammation? Earlier in the week, we looked at the acid-alkaline balance in the body, and the alkaline-forming foods and the alkaline or the lifestyle